On October 1st, 331 BCE, the sun rose over a dusty plain in Mesopotamia near a village called Gaugamela, and what was waiting there was absolutely insane. Picture this: 250,000 soldiers. That's not a typo. 250,000 men stretched across the horizon. The largest army the ancient world had ever seen assembled in one place. At the center of this massive force sat Darius III, King of Kings, ruler of the Persian Empire. And he was confident, like ridiculously confident. He'd spent months preparing for this moment, flattening the ground, positioning his chariots with literal blades attached to their wheels, bringing war elephants from India, gathering cavalry from every corner of his empire. This wasn't just an army. This was a statement. This was supposed to be the end of Alexander the Great. But here's the thing that makes your jaw drop. Facing this 250,000 soldiers was Alexander with just 47,000 men, outnumbered more than 5 to 1. 25 years old, never lost a battle, and by the time the sun set that same day, the entire Persian Empire would be in ruins. Darius would be fleeing for his life for the second time, and one of history's greatest military empires would simply cease to exist. This is the story of how a 25-year-old Macedonian king destroyed a superpower in a single afternoon. And trust me, the way he did it is absolutely wild. Let's rewind for a second because you need to understand how Alexander even got to this point. This guy fought every single war like there was no second chance. Like every battle was literally do or die. Back in 334 BCE, just 3 years before Gaugamela, he crossed into Asia with only 35,000 men on a mission to punish Persia for invading Greece decades earlier and to prove that Macedonian dominance was real. His pattern was simple but terrifying: decisive victories, personal leadership, and making sure every fight was final. At the Battle of Granicus River in 334, Alexander led a cavalry charge directly into Persian forces and almost died when an axe literally split his helmet open. But he won, and Persia broke. Then came the Battle of Issus in 333, and this is where things got personal. Darius himself showed up to stop Alexander, thinking his presence would intimidate the young king. The battlefield was narrow, which actually negated Persia's massive numbers. And Alexander did something absolutely insane. He charged directly at Darius, not at the army, at the king himself. Darius panicked and fled, abandoning his own family, his treasury, and his entire army. Alexander wasn't just winning battles, he was shattering the psychological authority of the Persian throne itself. After Issus, the city of Tyre decided to resist Alexander, so he laid siege to it for 7 brutal months and basically erased it from the map. Egypt took one look at what happened to Tyre and immediately surrendered, crowning Alexander as pharaoh without a fight. But here's the problem: Darius was still alive, still ruling the heart of the empire, and he was learning from his defeats. By 331 BCE, there was nowhere left to run. Darius chose the battlefield this time, and he chose it carefully. Gaugamela was a wide, flat, endless plain, perfect for cavalry encirclement and for using his overwhelming numbers. This terrain was made for Persia. Darius believed Alexander's luck had finally run out. Alexander believed something else entirely: that wars were decided not by killing every soldier, but by seeing the king and breaking him in front of his own men. Both sides were about to risk absolutely everything. The night before the battle is honestly fascinating because you can see the mindset of both leaders. Darius had a plan: send his scythe chariots to tear open the Macedonian line, crush both flanks with cavalry, then finish off Alexander when he's exposed and vulnerable. Simple, brutal, overwhelming. Alexander's officers came to him and begged him to launch a night attack to catch the Persians off guard while they were sleeping, and Alexander straight up refused, saying something that's been quoted for over 2,000 years. "I will not steal victory like a thief." He wanted Darius to see him, to face him, to lose in broad daylight where there could be no excuses. That night, Alexander walked the battlefield alone, studying the ground, figuring out exactly where the empire would break. Let's talk about what each side actually brought to this fight, because the numbers are staggering. Darius had 250,000 men pulled from every corner of his empire. Elite cavalry from Bactria and Scythia, infantry from Babylon, Media, Syria, and India, 200 side chariots with blades mounted on the wheels designed to cut through formation lines, and actual war elephants. Commanding the left wing was Bessus with Bactrian and Scythian cavalry, widely considered some of the best horsemen in the world. On the right wing was Mazaeus with Syrian and Mesopotamian cavalry, and at the center, surrounded by his royal guard, sat Darius himself. The Persian plan was textbook. Stretch your wings beyond the enemy's flanks, encircle them, crush them from all sides, with 5-to-1 odds. It should have been a massacre. Alexander's force was tiny by comparison, 47,000 total with 0 reserves. His center was 31,000 heavy infantry forming the phalanx, armed with 18-foot sarissas, those massive pikes that made the phalanx so deadly. Behind them were 9,000 light troops, peltasts, archers, and elite shock infantry. On the wings were just 7,000 cavalry total. Alexander positioned himself on the right wing with his companion cavalry, the strike force he always led personally. On the left wing was Parmenion, one of Alexander's most trusted generals, commanding Thessalian and Greek cavalry in a defensive role. Before the battle started, Alexander gave a speech that honestly gives you chills even reading about it thousands of years later. He told his men they weren't fighting for gold or command. They were fighting for purpose. "This ground is yours to stand on," he said. "There's no road home that doesn't go through this field. Numbers don't decide fate. Discipline decides." He instructed them to hold the line, watch him, and follow where he rode. Then he said something that defines his entire philosophy. "Better to die here than live knowing we let fear decide." The army responded by slamming their shields and striking their spears against bronze, a sound that must have been deafening. They were all in. When the battle began, Alexander did something that looked like a mistake, but was actually genius. The Persians stretched their wings to encircle the Macedonian line, which was their whole plan. Alexander responded by drifting his entire line slowly to the right, away from the prepared killing ground Darius had spent weeks flattening. It looked like he was making a tactical error, moving onto rougher terrain. Bessus, commanding the Persian left, understood the danger immediately. If Alexander got too far right, he'd be fighting on ground that favored maneuverability over numbers. So Bessus extended his cavalry outward to match Alexander's movement, thousands of horsemen stretching the Persian line. And here's the critical part. This thinned the Persian center around Darius. Bessus eventually decided he had to attack rather than keep extending, so he charged the Macedonian right wing. Alexander's bait worked perfectly. The Persian left was now fully engaged in combat. With Bessus committed, Darius launched his main assault. 200 scythed chariots and war elephants charged directly at the Macedonian phalanx. This should have been devastating. But the phalanx didn't panic. They opened lanes, creating corridors between their formations, and the chariots screamed through empty space while projectiles cut down their drivers. The elephants were harassed by skirmishers and blinded by spears. When the charge was spent, the phalanx closed ranks and finished them. Darius's gamble collapsed in seconds. Meanwhile, on the opposite flank, Macedon attacked Parmenion hard. Darius then ordered a massive infantry charge at the center. Tens of thousands of soldiers pushed forward simultaneously. Every reserve, every option. The entire Persian army was now committed, and that decision cost Darius everything, because Alexander saw it. Bessus was locked in combat on the left. The infantry had pulled forward from the center. A thin, frayed section appeared in the Persian left center, and standing right there, exposed, was the King of Kings himself. Alexander gathered his companion cavalry, wheeled left, and charged directly at Darius. The wedge formation smashed into the Persian center. Fighting reached Darius himself. Alexander cut through the royal guard step by step, and Darius broke. For the second time in his life, he fled the battlefield. The moment Darius turned his chariot and ran, the Persian center collapsed. Orders stopped. Units disengaged. The empire became a crowd. Bessus pulled back when he realized the king was gone. Everyone else just dissolved. Alexander gave chase, but then a message arrived. Parmenion was in serious trouble on the left flank. Macedon, who didn't know Darius had fled, was close to breaking through the Macedonian line. Alexander made a rare decision for a conqueror obsessed with capturing his enemy. He turned back, reinforced Parmenion, and stabilized the flank. Only then did the battle truly end. Darius escaped, but his empire did not. The aftermath was swift and total. Babylon opened its gates. Susa surrendered its treasury. Persepolis burned to the ground. Alexander didn't conquer the Persian Empire city by city. He shattered its command structure in a single afternoon at Gaugamela. But the war wasn't finished. As long as Darius lived, resistance could form around him. So Alexander pushed east, chasing legitimacy, not just territory. That pursuit led into the mountains and narrow passes where, in 330 BCE, a Persian force made one final stand at a place called the Persian Gate, designed specifically to stop Alexander completely. And what happened there nearly ended Alexander's entire campaign.